Hey, welcome to our daily edition of Friend of God. We're taking this directly from our new book called Friend of God, Letting Jesus Say Who You Really Are, because we really believe that when you learn how Jesus defines you, it changes how you define you. You are not the sum of your mistakes and victories. You are who Jesus says you are. You are the one He loves. Thus, you are a friend of God. And in this incredible journey through the writings of John, we see John telling us over and over again, this is what it looks like to be loved by Jesus. And so through 40 days, we're going to take a look at what Jesus is showing to John, and thus John is showing to us. That John comes to the conclusion that I am the one that Jesus loves, and thus we can come to that same conclusion. So, every day, we're going to take one of these chapters and give you just a very quick thing to think about and pray about for that day. And so here is today's episode. Day 5, Friend of God. We're doing a little bit of a deep dive into this book and the words of Jesus that we read about in John's Gospel. And today we get to chapter 5, which is entitled, I Am the One Who Can Be Included. How can that impact your day today? Well, let's start off with thinking about the woman that Jesus is talking to in the story. The Samaritan woman would have been somebody who was, in the Jews' mind, a religious half-breed. In other words, decades before, there was an Assyrian invasion of the northern tribes of Israel. They were carted away. They intermarried, and so you had basically part Jewish person, part Assyrian, so they weren't considered to be full-blooded Jews, and then they had some strange religious practices because of what they've picked up from the Assyrians. Now they've landed in Samaria, which is just above where the southern kingdom of the Jewish people would have continued to reside. We're thinking Jerusalem and so on and so forth. So you've got these people that are kind of hanging out in this area, and they would like to be considered Jews. They'd like to be able to connect with God, but they're just on the outside looking in. They're just left out. So think about somebody in your perhaps social group, friend group, that would love to be part of your group, but aren't necessarily allowed, and just multiply that by 100. This particular woman has been struggling with a variety of things. And not only does she feel herself being left out, but she's also struggling with some relational issues. She's had multiple men married to her and now divorced. She must feel like an incredible failure. She must feel rejected. She must feel shame. And now she's living with a man, probably just for the sake of survival, because the whole idea of being the modern woman and having a career and taking care of yourself back then wasn't so much of a thing. And one day she wanders away to the well to get a little bit of water. Now, she goes in the middle of the day. Why would she be there? Doesn't make a lot of sense. It would have been hot at that point, but she knew there wouldn't be anybody else there. Doesn't want to show up in the morning and all the other ladies are there and they're all talking about her. She'd rather be there in silence. So she rolls up in the middle of the day and Jesus is sitting there. All the disciples have gone off to find the local 7-Eleven and get some snacks, and there's Jesus. And the woman shows up. And Jesus starts talking with her, and she can't even believe that he would talk to her. She realizes he's Jewish. And then once she begins to figure out this guy is open to a conversation, she starts talking about religion. She starts talking about the Messiah. One day he'll show up and he'll make all things right and tell us where we're supposed to worship. Is it Jerusalem? Is it in Samaria? And, how do we worship and who's included? And Jesus begins to talk to her, and he says things to her that reveal he knows exactly who she is. And yet he's still talking to her. I want you to think about something. Jesus tends to accept people we overlook. So I want you to think about, who is that in your life today that you tend to overlook? And what would it be like to notice them? Maybe to send them a text, maybe to give them a call, maybe to buy them lunch, maybe to jot them a note. Who do you overlook? And second of all, I want you to think about this prayer. God, thank you for not overlooking me. Thank you that I can be included as well. Much like this woman who had been overlooked for so many years and been identified only by her sin and shame, Jesus shows up and includes her. And this is so awesome. She's the first person that hears Jesus say, I am the Messiah. Think about that. All the people Jesus has been around, the disciples even. She gets to be the one that hears it first. She runs off, tells everybody she knows, and when Jesus comes back to the town, there's 5,000 people that have shown up. I think that's where John got his information. Where'd you hear about this? Well, from this woman. And she happened to be somebody that Jesus talked to at a well. So who's that person today? Where's that well in your life? And how could you make them feel included also? Well, I hope that was helpful for you today. Take that with you throughout the remainder of your day. We'll be back tomorrow with another daily edition. Make sure you check us out on YouTube and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll be back tomorrow with another daily edition of Friend of God.